Hi, welcome back to the workshop for part 12 of the Micawber Telecaster build, and in this episode we're going to get some lacquer onto the neck. So when we left last time we had this neck kind of very roughly shaped. I've done a little bit more work on it since then. As you can see, I've actually trial fitted it to the body, so the holes are drilled now for the screws to bolt it on with. I've done a little bit more work around this transition just to clean it up a little bit. Really happy with the shape now. So from here on in, it's just a case of lots and lots of sanding. So far this has been sanded to kind of 60 grit, 60 or 80 grit. So it's very rough. There's a lot of kind of sanding marks in it. So to sort that out, I'm just going to take a 80 grit pad to it at first, just to kind of get the worst of the 60 grit marks out, and then I'll just take a series of progressively finer papers to it until we've got the finish that we want. Okay, so that's the main part of the neck sanded up to 150 grit, which I've done on a block, just to keep things nice and straight. But now I'm going to change to a 180 pad, so this is getting quite fine really, and I'm going to just do this by hand now. The risk you run with the block is that you put flats into the curve of the neck, and we don't want that, so the final fine sanding from here on in will all be done by hand. I just want to stop for a minute and have a quick chat about what's happening with the channel. I started doing YouTube just over a year ago, and it was really something to do when I was in lockdown. And since that point, it's grown beyond my wildest dreams of what I would ever really achieve. I think in some regards, I was quite lucky. The Great Guitar Build Off 2020 was really great for me, and kind of changed my YouTube world to a certain extent, and I'm massively grateful for that. But the channel's continued to grow since then. It's at a point now where it is monetized, and I hope you take the time to at least watch a few of the adverts. It really will help me to develop the channel, produce better and more interesting content. But that's only part of the picture. There's a range of metrics that YouTube use to push content out to a wider audience. Some of that is in my control, and I'm trying really hard to make that happen. But some of it is up to you guys. So there's things like comments. Please, you know, if you feel you've got something to say to me, good, bad or indifferent, I'm always happy to hear it. So leave a comment below. Another element is the vast majority of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed to the channel, and a few more subscriptions wouldn't do me any harm at all. So if you feel that I've earned it, I'd be really grateful if you hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell as well. Okay, so that's everything sanded now to 320 grit, and it's very, very smooth. There's really no need to go any further than that on a neck that you're going to be lacquering. All you're doing is really polishing the wood up, and it makes it harder for your lacquer to stick. So that's absolutely perfect for what we need. So now I'm going to repeat the process on the back of the headstock, the heel, the front of the headstock, and all the little edges. Okay, so with all the sanding and prep work out of the way, it's time to get a bit of finish onto this neck, and true to form, I'm going to be using some nitrocellulose lacquer. This is tinted amber nitro, and it's a product that I use all the time. Now, if you've ever been on the internet, you'll know there's a fair bit of contention about which guitar finish you should be using. As far as I'm concerned, there's no right or wrong answer. If you're happy with what you're using, go with it. You're not going to bother me. However, there are some good reasons why I use nitro. I think firstly, and bearing in mind I work in an unheated workshop in England, and the weather can range from red hot to freezing on a daily basis, nitrocellulose is very forgiving of those fluctuations in temperature. There are points below which you can't use it, so you have to introduce some heating into the workshop, but generally, you know, you can get away with it at any point in the year. It's relatively quick drying, and what I mean by that is that you can get a second, a third, a fourth coat on quite quickly. You don't have to wait for days and days in between coats. It does take a little bit of time to cure properly, depending on the time of year and depending on how much you want to polish it up. If you want to go for a really high gloss mirror finish, you know, you might have to leave it a month to cure. But for me, that's not a problem. Generally be able to work around that. Another major benefit for me is it's really easy to repair. You know, you can usually tint some clear lacquer to match what you've got and give it a couple of blow-ins with an airbrush or whatever, and then a couple of days later give it a quick sand down and a polish, and generally, you know, you'll often be able to create an invisible repair. So that's a major bonus for me. And then just like logistically, you know, it's cheap, it's readily available. I've got all the kit that I need to apply it, so I've got a decent compressor, I've got spray guns, etc. And it ages really, really well. So for me, I don't mind if 10 years down the line the lacquer starts to check a little bit or it goes a little bit dull. You know, for me that's all part of the beauty of a guitar that's starting to show its age a little bit. I do use other finishes occasionally. I've used shellac, I've used drying oils, but generally I kind of build vintage looking guitars, so I kind of put the vintage looking finish onto them. But like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, so if you do it differently and you're happy with the results, that's brilliant, but this is what I like. Okay, so to mix this up, simply a case of getting a little bit of the lacquer. Now this looks really, really dark, but of course it's not going on this thick, so it'll be much lighter. when we spray it on the job. A little bit more. And then I'm just simply thinning this down with some standard thinners. I'll put a fresh filter in the gun, and I'm just going to run it through another filter. Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, so this has had a couple of coats now, and it's dark enough. I'm happy with the colour, but it's still not a thick enough covering. So I'm going to clean the gun out. I'm going to mix up some clear and probably give this about 3 or 4 coats of clear now. Okay, so this has had a thin coat of clear, so now it's time to get the decal onto the headstock so we can start to over lacquer that, and then we can get the rest of the clear coat onto the neck. So I've got a bowl of warm water, and I've got one of my little decals. So this is done on an inkjet printer with decal paper that I bought off Amazon. Relatively straightforward, and all I'm going to do is just drop it into the warm water. And what generally happens is it curls up, and then it will kind of uncurl itself. And once it's uncurled itself, it's ready to go on to the headstock. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water onto the headstock first, just to make it easier to slide around. And simply a case sliding it off the backing paper. This is the tricky bit. Get rid of that because we don't need it. And slide that into a suitable position. Now I always try and keep them kind of parallel to the top of the headstock on this kind of headstock shape. And stop messing with it. I think that's good. I've just blotted most of the moisture off, but I need to leave that to dry now, and I'll know when it's ready because it will go a kind of milky white opaque colour. Okay, so as you can see, this is totally dry, but it's now gone white. This isn't a problem. As soon as I get a coat of lacquer onto this, it will go translucent again. And as we build the coats up, it will sink back into the lacquer, and you'll only be able to see the white lettering. Okay, so the headstock's had 3 really good coats of lacquer now over that decal, and it's starting to level off quite nicely. So I'm going to give that a couple of minutes to set up, and then I'll hang the neck up again and just give it a couple more coats of clear all over, just to get it up to thickness. Okay, so that's the last of the clear coats on. Really quite happy with that. It's a little bit orange peely, but it's got a nice flat glossy coat on it, and the front looks nice. I'm going to have to sand this down when it's had a bit of time to dry, and I potentially might have to just put another couple of coats over the top to give me enough lacquer to completely bury that decal. But looking at it, it looks very flat at the moment, so I might get away with it as it is. But I have to say, all in all, I'm very happy with it. Right, so I'm going to set this aside now to dry for a little while, and while that's happening, I'm going to pick up with the body again, and we'll start to get that polished and ready for assembly. But that's for another time, so I'm going to leave this video here. So as always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.